gorgeous people. People are coming in fast and heavy. It's so nice to see you all. Okay, guys, I've got some people that I don't recognize, so I'm going to run through the quick kind of call rules for those of you that aren't familiar with them. I have asked very nicely, okay, completely bullied and told her, do not check the chat box. So I will, as always, filter the calls through to January throughout the call at appropriate times. Please feel free to ask quirky questions only, nothing boring. If you can find it on Google, then just kind of go search Google. Like, we want interesting, fun things. We want, that meme. I want to know what keeps you up at night kind of things. So January, I've got to be careful.
There's so much that keeps me up at night. We could just do a whole hour on that.
I know. I have to be careful with my introductions sometimes I think I might lose the guest in the first 5 minutes. Like, their eyes start darting. But there's so many questions, so many things we're going to talk about. If you type your question and I don't ask it right that minute, don't worry. I'm a pro. I've got you. I will fit the question in. And we will send the chat to January after the call. So if you do have a message for her or anything, feel free to put it in the chat box. Okay, so to jump right in, I have so many questions. I'm going to trip over myself to get to them. But 10-year-old January, can you please tell me about her? Draw me a picture of 10-year-old January, what she was thinking, what her life was like.
She is convinced she is never gonna have a boyfriend, even at 10. That was like a big thing at that time. Speaking quite frankly, I was raised in a kind of bedroom community in Southern Connecticut. And I was one of 2 Black kids in my elementary school class of like 90 kids.
What's a bedroom community?
It's a term that they use to describe the communities outside of New York City, and I guess probably other metropolitan areas where it's just where you sleep. You work in the city, but then you commute back out to sleep in these neighborhoods. So there were a lot of kids whose parents commuted into the city and had fabulous lives and fabulous jobs. Because I was always focused on New York City. That was always going to be where I was going to be, where I was going to end up, where I was going to live the rest of my life, where I was going to die, said the woman currently sitting in her home in Atlanta. So I got a great 20 years in New York. But yeah, I wanted to be an actor. That was always the thing. I probably would have been, loudly singing some along to my record album of an original Broadway cast recording of, Annie or what have you at that time, The King and I, maybe. If 10-year-old January had known that reading books out loud was a job that I could have for the rest of my life, I would have been very excited. So that's kind of a nice thing.
Okay, I'm going to skip around a lot. I hope that's okay. I'm also horrifically bad at names, at titles, because I consume quite a lot of audiobooks, and in bits and pieces, and depending on the mood, I have like a personal relationship with my audiobooks. And I listened to a little bit of one of yours just recently, and actually it was by accident. It wasn't, I don't research these calls. I prefer to know as little as possible so we can find it all out together. But this one, I thought, oh, I'm interviewing January. I'm going to listen to this. And it was The Deep, Deep Snow. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I love that book.
This brings me to 10-year-old January, because I'm trying to work things out in my mind. And in all the people that were saying how much they loved you, I think this was one of the comments about your narrating. You are landed right in that moment. Presence, whatever, but you are, I've never ever heard anything like it, ever. We're all trying to do it, but I told myself that it was because I'm always thinking ahead. I was not diet my whole life. I'm one diet away from my perfect life. I'm going to move to London, which, like you, was like my dream, and I did it. Like, but even when I walk, I used to fall a lot because my brain was up there, but my body was here. And I
used to do
thought
that
that was
too.
why I couldn't. I think it comes out in my narrating. If I don't, how the hell do you do that? I've never heard anyone achieve it in a tangible, purposeful way. You are literally present. And it makes it impossible to drift off from your narrating, because I listen when I go to sleep at night. And like, I can't go to sleep because so is it a natural talent? Because I thought it was the kind of person that if you were a person whose mind was always not there, then that would show up in narrating. But the way you described 10-year-old January, you sound like me, a dreamer
Yeah.
with like,
Oh, yeah.
So unpack that for me, please.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's very kind of you, and I'm couldn't be more delighted that that is what you're receiving, because that is what I'm doing. If insofar as I'm doing anything, that's what I'm experiencing when I narrate, right? And so part of it is just trusting my own body and my own instincts to know where I'm going to go, right? Like, it's like a thing when you live in a big city like London or New York and you ride public transportation. Like, at a certain point, you don't have to look at the map anymore. You just know where the stops are, and you know where you're going to get off, and you know whether you're going to be at the front of the train or the back of the train. It's just something that develops after a while. And so for me, when I prep a book, like, people always ask me, what's your prep look like? And it's like, I read the book, and I'm not saying that to be glib. I try to read the book like a reader reads the book. I try to experience the book like the person who purchases the book wants to experience the book, because I think that there's like a kinesthetic response that you have to certain parts of it. Your heart's racing here, or you're maybe a little bored there, or whatever it is, that I trust will just be in there when I go back to narrate the book. So it's really important to me to have that experience one time and not be super forensic when I'm prepping the book. Sometimes, of course, depending on the complexity of the book, you have to be much more forensic.
But
with
are
something
you
like the Deep, Deep Snow,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but are you purposefully transferring that kinesthetic connection to your readers? Are you consciously thinking about that, or is it just an instinctual thing you've always been good at?
No, it's just something that I trust will happen. It's because I come from a theater background, right? And I know that there are things that if you do them in rehearsal, you don't have to take a snapshot in time and make sure that you repeat it. If you have the experience in rehearsal and it's real, then you trust that later on, a week later, 3 weeks later, 6 months later, 8 shows a week, that thing will show up for you when it's supposed to. On some days, you don't always have access to that organic thing because you didn't sleep right, or your stomach is bothering you, or the person in the second row is looking at their cell phone. So you don't have control, right? So when you say, are you doing it deliberately? I don't have control over what the performance is going to be. I don't have control over what kind of sleep I'm going to get on Monday before I start reading this, romance I'm narrating. But I do have control over how I experience the book when I prep it. So I just try to have that, and then I just trust that it's in there. And then when I come back to it again, that's some semblance of that, because your body remembers, your body remembers things your brain could never. So in some sense, I think I rely on a little bit of muscle memory. I rely on a little bit of, just trust. There's a lot of trust in the way that I narrate. I think that word comes up a lot when I'm talking about it.
You trust yourself, don't you?
I trust myself. I also trust that the author did their job, even with a bad book. This is the book they wrote. This is what they want it to be. My job is not to make it better. My job is to do my best. And when people say to you oh, I think you made that book better. It's like, well, that's nice to hear, but that's actually, it's kind of irrelevant because it's not my job. My job is to meet the book where it is, meet the author where it is, meet the audience where they are, and just be conduit, right? Be a vessel, for lack of a better word, for them to receive the thing that the author created.
And there's a connection, because Oh my God, I just realized something. There's a connection. Isn't there a connection? Because the us not changing the book, and our job is to, I had a I was up for a book I really, 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 really wanted, and I didn't get it. And in the same email, it was, but we can give you this book, which was like a nonfiction book. It wasn't the thriller or anything. And just now, for some reason, when you were saying this, it popped into my head. I think I can't say the title, but the title was something like How to Deal with Life's Disappointments.
I mean, that's funny.
So, but do you not find that books find you? The
Yeah.
books that you can just meet where they are, they find you.
Yeah, but I really like to make sure that people know this. That's like, let's say, just pick a number. Let's say I'm doing 60 books a year.
Yeah.
That's like 6 of them, or maybe 3 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. But then do you
The
not find things
vast
in the books you
majority.
didn't love that you
Mhm.
like can take something from and learn?
Absolutely. But you're never, the experience of having that like mind meld with an author, story, character, the way that they shape their prose, how long their sentences are. Like
Yeah.
I've done books where like I'm like, this is a great book, but I'm not breathing right for the, like there's so many components to you matching with the book. And people, I think, are really hard on themselves sometimes. They're like, when am I going to get the good books? It's like, let me know when you figure that out. Because it's really a very small percentage, and it has less to do with good and more to do with like that connection that you're having with the author and the story. So when it happens, I'm grateful for it, but it is not in any way something that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be the narrator I want to be until I match all my books. It's just impossible, even the majority.
Yeah.
So it's like having a technique and a philosophy that is flexible enough to be able to accommodate all the books I don't necessarily match with. The one that you're talking about, Deep Deep Snow, is one of my top books ever. It was a perfect match. The Diviners by Libra Bray, perfect match. The Change, like I've got like a short list in my brain of about 12 books that I've done in the 15 years I've been doing this that were like chef's kiss perfect.
Yeah. You were like a
That's just
completely
joy.
different, you were literally the character. Like I
Yeah.
could not put you together and nothing. I mean, I just like you were the character. You're a different person. I mean, but you're an actress and you're an accomplished actress. And I do want to go back because I'm really interested in how you become that person. But I do want to touch on something that we had brought up earlier, an interesting conversation. You'd said it was okay to bring up on this because I ran a little experiment. So I send the guests to these shows a little email saying I've tagged you on Instagram, Facebook, and January came back and said, well, I'm not on like basically any of those. I go on Twitter with like my writers, but I'm not going to be posting anything. And I thought, I want to do that because why do I scroll through a bunch of things just to literally I do it purposefully to make myself feel unsatisfied, scroll
Mm-hmm.
through things
Mm.
purposefully. And I thought, well, I don't need Facebook because the excuse is, oh, I get my work from social media. I don't get my work from Facebook. I've never been hired for anything posting pink faux fur jackets on Facebook or
Yeah.
reading about other people's. But I lasted till 5 o'clock. I did one day. I lasted till 5 o'clock. Now it's just a pain because I have to find where I hit all my shortcuts to my social media. But I'm interested in your experience. You said that you did this in 2013. What triggered
Yeah.
it? And I'd love to hear about that week.
Yeah. So it was 90 days. And interesting because it's a detox number. It's like so in 2013, there was a group, and this is not to be like I'm the guru of quitting social media because I am still on Twitter, and I have an Instagram that's not operational. I haven't posted on it in like 5 years, but I do occasionally like look at my nieces and nephews on it. But in 2013, I'm crazy. I'm a little bit crazy.
Crazy is
So
always good.
that was the year 2012. I decided I got obsessed. So I like words, right? I'm a narrator. I like words and I like definitions. I'm really into like things meaning what they mean. And so I got my dad had said to me at one point, like, I posted all these things and you and your sister, you don't like them. And I was like, yeah, Dad, because I don't like them. And he was like, right, but you don't like them. And I was like, right, because the thing is I don't like that. It doesn't. And so then that led me to think about like what that word means. And then I started thinking about what the word friend means, like friend me on Facebook. Right now we're going back 10 years. I don't even know if that's still the term, but so friend me, what does this mean? These are all my Facebook friends. Are they my friends? So then I decided that year for my birthday, so this would have been 2012 in December, I decided that I was going to write a personal thank you to every single person who wished me a happy birthday on Facebook. Because if I was going to call them my friends, then I should at least know who they are and have at least one sentence worth of something to say to them. So I put myself through that torment. It took me a while. And I came out the other side of it feeling very disgruntled. And I was like, this is, you know what? These people aren't my friends. This isn't the right word. This isn't the right word. And if it wasn't the right word, then like, what is this whole thing about anyway? So then around that summer of 2013, and I remember it very well because I was going to Japan. My ex-husband was on a national tour of a Broadway show. And I was going just because they were going to Japan. I was going to Japan too. So I got this thing on Facebook that there was this group that was doing 90 days off of Facebook, and they were doing it and they were going to ask you for your feedback and they were going to do check-ins with you every 30 days.
Ironic that they're doing it on Facebook.
And I was like, yeah, I think I want to do that. I think I'm going to try that. Or maybe I got an email about it, but it was that you had to give them permission to shut down your account. And they wanted to know how many times you tried to get back into it, or like it was all this, but I was like, oh, it's like a study. This is very interesting. I'm going to do this.
Wait, you gave them your password?
No, it wasn't a password thing. It was just like, we're going to block basically we're going to make sure that you can't get it. Like if you click on it, it's going to say to you, you're on hiatus for 90 days. So I did that and I was stunned. Because I was aware at that point that like my anxiety around social media was significant, but not having access to it made me even more. And this is pre really anything else. I think Twitter was around. I don't even know if I was on Twitter at that point, but there was no Instagram, and or maybe it was just starting. And it was really, really hard. And then there was like a button you could press if you felt like you weren't going to make it. And I remember a couple of times going on and looking at that button and being like, am I a quitter? I'm not a quitter.
Was it chemically hard, or was it you're telling yourself stories? And if so, what stories were you telling yourself that made it hard?
I think it was both. But the most interesting thing in terms of like telling myself stories is that I had a couple of friends that got in fights with me, actually were so angry with me. And I will never forget one of my friends who's like such a dear, rational human being. And he was like, you can't go off Facebook. You're going to Japan. How am I going to see Japan if you go off Facebook while you're in Japan? And I was like, you can email me and you can text me. And he was like, but people reacted very strongly, much more strongly than you would think. And then I did have some anxiety about, but I thought, I'm going to Japan for a month. This seems like good timing. And then I guess I had the benefit of going to another country and being totally immersed in something new without the dopamine of the scrolling and the clicking and the posting and the looking for likes. So I had this wonderful experience. And so I got to 90 days and they emailed me and they said, do you want to go another 30 days? And I said, sure. I did another 30 days. And then at the end of that, I did all the surveys and everything. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go back on. I was on for 48 hours and I was so aware of my blood pressure, heart rate, anxiety. Mm-hmm. I wanted to cry all the time. I was nervous. It was like I had taken myself out of this world and I was incapable of going back into it. So that's how I left Facebook 10 years ago.
I'm gonna look in. I really do think I'm gonna, because what I realized just by doing it, my big success up until 5 p.m. was that go to social media and it started when I started narrating and I got those first auditions by email,
Mhm.
and I got that rush of
Yeah.
like, I'm succeeding, I'm succeeding. So I
Yes.
go on social media in case I see one nice thing. Somebody sends me one nice, I'm looking for the next hit.
Yeah.
Like, or online shopping. Lately I've made some
Mhm.
unfortunate purchases because I want to hit. And
Mhm.
that's usually a warning sign that everything's not all right. You're kind of avoiding other
Yeah.
stuff.
And when people
Like,
ask me, like, what do what about work? What about networking? And I say, look, if you take all the time you spend on social media that is not actually related to your work, and you picked 5 people in the business to just have one-on-one relationships with over email or at conferences or taking coachings or putting together a group of like-minded narrators that you just meet with on
yeah,
Zoom once a week for 2 hours. Any one of those things is going to give you so much more
yeah. And
benefit.
the messenger, I don't even mind messenger. My friends message me. If somebody needs to get a hold of me, I mean, I know to me, friend, because I don't see people in person. I'm in London and I'm quite kind of happy with that after like COVID. Like I'm kind of like didn't mind not
Yeah.
having people around. But the the I don't need to passively scroll groups, passively scroll. I've started going on Twitter just to like read writers complaining. I'm not even a writer. Why do I care?
Yeah. So
It,
it's, and I'm not, everyone should, some people are so good at, so I'm also just not good at it because it's not my interest. But
yeah,
there's like this low level thing where everyone's supposed to be their own PR department now, which is insane, frankly. Like that's a job for a reason. People go to school to learn how to do this stuff.
it's
It is a
business. It's a full-time
profession.
business, and
Yeah.
they do it full time. And
Yeah.
I think but you see, I think because I specifically asked Aaron Moon to give me a list of narrators that I said, I want to interview narrators. I love I've got so many people on this schedule from all different areas. I want to interview everyone, of course. But I specifically wanted more narrators that were doing the work, but not necessarily constantly out there having to sell the work. Just heads down, working, jobbing actors. And you were on the list of people Aaron Moon was like
I love
a
Aaron.
non-miss.
He's
Everyone
great.
loves Aaron. Aaron's like, okay, tell me about the journey from little girl dreaming of becoming an actress. Nobody has a straight, everyone's got a bit of a circuitous path. And we love those people the most. If it was completely straight, we would just be annoyed. But tell me about the moments on your path from where you started to where you are now, where it could have taken a turn,
Mm.
and how you overcame those turns to end up doing what you wanted to do.
Where it could have taken a turn away from this,
Yeah,
where I am now.
yeah.
Um, gosh, where to begin? Um, my parents wanted nothing to do with me being a professional artist, and like still my mother likes to say, like, you could go to medical school. You could go to law school. I'm like, Mom, I'm 47. She's like, yeah, you're really smart. You could probably do it in less time than it would have taken you in your 20s. So there's that. If I had listened to my parents and gone to law school or med school. My grandmother was a huge lover of theater. And so she was the one who, would steal me away for a Saturday and take me down from Connecticut to New York and go see a Broadway show or go see a matinee and have dinner and come back.
Oh, I
And
love that. Did she wear gloves? For some reason, I picture your grandma wearing gloves.
well, she did, yeah, actually, she did sometimes. My grandmother was an Auntie Mame. She was very exuberant, loved life. And she ran a theater company, a community theater company, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I was born for many years. So She's got to be in there. My three best friends from college, who I still Zoom with every Sunday night for a few hours. We're in far-flung places, but we met doing theater in college. And I know for a fact that had I not had that group of folks when I moved to New York the first time, right after college, had I not had those people, my husband likes to say, like, nobody's like you guys. You guys are like the real life friends. Like, we all lived in an apartment together. We all worked at the same restaurants together. We all worked as temps together. We did everything together. So that was necessary. And then funny enough, I'm extremely unhelpful sometimes when people are like, how did you get your agent? Or how did you do this? And I think it's actually very cool that now in audiobooks, an agent is not in any way a necessity to be able to get into the business. It still was when I started.
I loved having an agent for like voiceover and acting. I loved having an agent.
It is a lovely thing and a luxury that I'm extremely grateful for, because I love the folks I work with. But it was, people are always like, oh, how did you get your voiceover agent? And I was like, I did a play. I didn't have a voiceover demo. I never made one. I have one now from stuff that I did after I got my agent, but I had never done voiceover. And there is something, I think this kind of ties into the whole like social media thing. I was in a play. It was one of the best things I had ever done up to that moment of my career. It was an August Wilson play in New York City, Two Trains Running. It was the first New York revival of the play since it had been on Broadway maybe 20 years earlier. And I was just doing the best work I'd ever done. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And there were a couple guys in the show who had the same agent, voiceover agent. So the whole voice department of that agency came to see our show. And I went to the bar afterwards where everyone was hanging out, which we did every night, not to network. I went to have a drink after the show because I was exhausted from the work I was doing, and ended up, kind of unbeknownst to me, talking to a woman at the bar who happened to be one of the agents from that group.
You worked from the inside out. You did the job. Your focus was on, I know this is annoying and stupid to say, but your focus was on your craft.
That's what I would say. That's what I would say
ticking the boxes.
Nobody believes me. And anybody who's, and I think there are a couple of people on this call who've worked with me, I say this all the time, and it's not to say that you don't have to do the other stuff. And I have done the other stuff at various points in my life. I've had to do the mailings. I've had to get the new headshot. I've had to take the classes. I do all of that, but it's never my first stop. My first stop is always, where am I with the work?
And if you're staying away from social media, you're protecting yourself from the I did a like a Greek book today, and they had the Furies, and the Furies were sitting there, like the guy was like burdened with Furies that were gonna like just tell him nasty things. You're disgraceful. You're a shit. And that's what you get. That's kind of, I thought, that's like Facebook.
Yeah. No, it's the internet, and it's everybody's telling you the story that they want you to hear, not the story that's in their head.
Yeah.
Not the story that's actually happening to them. They're telling you the version of it that they want you to know.
And your inner critic, they talk about your inner critic, but really, how do we really have our inner critic, or is it like outer critic? What if we're busy?
Well, the inner critic and the outer critic love to shake hands. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They love it when they meet up on the street.
Yeah.
But yeah, I learned pretty early in New York, and I got slapped down a lot in the first 10 years of my career. It took about 10 years for things to really start to gel, from when I first moved there when I was 21 until about 31. And I was caught many times putting myself out there, or getting in a meeting or getting in a room with someone, and then realizing I couldn't deliver. Of course they weren't going to pick me, sign me, cast me, whatever. I didn't have the thing. And people are not honest with themselves. And here's the secret. Your thing and someone else's thing are going to be completely different. So chasing the thing that you think is the thing is not going to get you there. It's always going to look like you're wearing someone else's clothes. And so you have to figure out what your thing is. And then when you do that, there is space for everyone. Somebody out there wants, when you are the best version of the thing that you do, somebody out there is going to want it.
And you're shining that out from the inside out. And they're attracted to that, because everyone wants their inner light, don't they? And if they sense that you know how to get your inner light, how to be in touch with it, then how do you take care of yourself? Do you have like a practice? Like, do you meditate? Do you only eat healthy food? Do you exercise? Do you box? How do you take care of yourself so that you can, because you said that you're in touch with your body, that you're,
yeah,
like my body and I haven't talked in like 2 decades. We hate each other's guts.
I mean, to be clear, when you asked me, like, how do you take care of yourself? My first thought was red wine.
Well, that's self-care at the highest level.
But that's only part of it. No, I do. I do. And I talk about this when I coach too. Like, it's a physical job to me, first and foremost. Physical, then mental, emotional. So I have got to do a workout of some sort before I sit down in the booth. If I go for a long walk, if I go for a run on the treadmill, if I lift weights, if I do some yoga, whatever it is, I got to do it. I cannot sit in the booth. And it's not just, a lot of people do a vocal warm up. That's great. That's only a little part of it. Then you've got this whole body that you want to be. And so when you ask me, taking it back to your very first question, how am I there? Well, if my entire body isn't awake and engaged, I can't be there. If only this much of me is awake and engaged and ready to go and warmed up, I can't be standing in a parking lot in Minnesota in the middle, or just here, or just, do you know what I mean? Or just my, whatever. Like, no, it's a full body sport. You got to feel it. If you say the sentence, and I felt it in my toes as the narrator, and you haven't done anything with your feet today, it's funny, but it's like, did you feel it in your toes? Because it sounded like you said it, but I don't know. Like, I felt it in my toes. They're right there, So I do a lot of that. And, I work out every day, 6 days a week, and I spend as much time as possible. This sounds so cliched. Spend as much time as possible not thinking about my job.
I love
as much
cliches.
Time as possible, which is, some weeks that's a lot and some weeks that's a little, but I try very hard to make sure that I'm with people who do not talk about the business when I'm in my leisure time. Right? My husband and I, we have a 2-narrator household. We are very conscious of, like, we're talking about business right now, and now we're going to go watch some prestige television and drink a bottle of wine and not talk about audiobooks or,
God, I sit and scroll my phone thinking about audiobooks while my husband's talking to me.
Because you could do that infinitely. There's too much out there. You could do that infinitely. Yeah.
That's really bad. That's a really good point. And as much time as possible not thinking about it. That's wow. Because, like, I've never considered that, because, like, you can take a day off, but I'm still thinking about audiobooks the entire time. And then you don't do it as well.
I did that for a period of time in my career, in my New York life in particular. I was in New York for 20 years. I had so many great opportunities, so many failures, so many humiliating failures, but like so many wins too. But I was definitely, for many, many years, like, I didn't want to be around anybody who didn't want to talk about work. It's like, hustle, this and that, before we even used those terms.
It doesn't feel good. It's embarrassing. It doesn't feel good after a while. You feel like this pitiful person. Everyone else is off enjoying themselves, and you're like, where'd you all go? I hate holidays, because it's like, what are you doing? You're not emailing. What's wrong with you people? It's not, I don't like it. I want to stop it, because when you're a kid and you watch a movie and it's like this glorious moment, I want moments like that again, and I haven't had them in a long time, because your attention.
It's hard.
So
I find, just really quick, I find, for me, the thing that I had to do in order to get away from that mindset of, like, all that matters is the grind, all that matters is doing the thing, is volunteer work. It's very simple. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It can be anything that you like. I remember I started in New York, I started walking dogs at the shelter. Like that was one of the things that I did. And then I ended up getting involved with a group that worked with underprivileged kids in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan. And I ended up working with them for 10 years. But anything, you know, one day and that's the thing, like people I think are intimidated to start and they're afraid about, you know, commitments and all this stuff, but like it can be a food pantry, it can be anything that you like doing. It could be, there's a group here called Trees Atlanta, you know, there's whatever your thing is, just like get away from this, because
Your self preoccupation, because it's like what they say about money. If you're worried about not having money, tithe, even if it's like a penny, because it's that energy in motion going in the right direction.
But I think like, and when we talk about, again, like the kinesthetic experience of reading a book, like we are storytellers. We're storytellers. That is what it means to be a narrator. It means you know how to tell a story well.
Yeah.
So go out in the world and experience other kinds of stories, other people's stories, other settings that are not the one that you're in every day, because that's going to make you a better storyteller. I guarantee it. I don't have any lack of confidence saying like, go and do other things and that will make you a better storyteller. I know it, 100% confidence. Doesn't have to be all the time. Could just be once, you know, but you'll learn something.
I love that. Okay, we've got some quirky questions coming in.
Oh, good.
Barbara would like to know, describe a typical day in the life of January.
A typical day in the life, if I had one. If I literally had one. Hi, Barbara.
She's like an uber cool, multi-talented narrator, actress, director, coach. You don't have time for typical, do you?
My cat wakes me up every morning and I give him his medicine. A typical work day if I'm in the studio. I can definitely say that because I'm pretty regimented about that. Typical work day, get up in the morning, have about 2 hours before I have to be in the studio. So the very first thing I do after I feed the cat is work out and drink a ton of water, and then get in the shower. Always do the same vocal warm-up in the shower. It's not anything extensive. It's something that I learned when I was singing back in my early theater career. Make some vocalizations, get out of the shower, and I always try to listen to something on my drive to the studio. I work in a remote studio. But even if I worked from home, I think I would do this. I listen to somebody else. So I can hear somebody else's voice in my head, because you're about to hear your own voice in your head for a while. So I listen to a podcast, or I listen to an audiobook, or I listen to something else, which also reminds me, I think in a good way, especially podcasts, of how imperfect the human voice is in its natural state. When it's organic, when it's real, when someone's being their authentic self, they do not sound perfect. It's a good thing to just have in there. And then I'm extremely regimented in the studio. My studio days are 10 to 5. I start reading at 10. I take a break at 11:30 for 15 minutes. I go back in from 11:45 to 1. I have lunch from 1 to 1:30. I go back in at 1:30. I work until about 2:45. I take another break, and then I work until 5. Always.
I love the hours. I find that I get so much more done when I allocate time rather than page length, minute length. So much more done because it's
sometimes I have page goals,
space.
But yeah, it's and also, you know, it allows you to sort of be where you are on that day. A page goal is always going to be an arbitrary. It's like you wish, you hope, and then there's a leaf blower, whatever, and then your stomach is reacting to something you ate for dinner last night. So yeah, and in that time, doing a 7-hour recording day, I usually get between 3.5 and 4 finished hours a day. And then I come home, and I would love to say that I come home and then I don't read, but I read. I come home, I give my eyes and my voice a break for about 2 hours, and then inevitably during the week I end up reading, prepping more, or God forbid, reading for pleasure, because I love to read. And that's
you
that's
listen
it.
to audiobooks like instead of reading a book ever, or only, yeah.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of memoir. I'm like, it's so funny because I'm kind of known, I think, or like the best books I've done are like fiction, fantasy, and like what I listen to is like memoir and self-help. Um, so yeah. I listened to them more. I didn't listen to them at all. And this is something else that's different, I think, for me than a lot of narrators now. When I first started doing audiobooks, I I started doing audiobooks pre iPhone, like pre smartphone. So people weren't listening to things all the time. I didn't listen to an audiobook for, I think it was like 5 years. I was narrating before I listened to an audiobook.
Wow.
So I didn't have any preconceived notions about what I was supposed to sound like, which is good in some ways. But the caveat to that is that I was always directed in those early years because everybody had directors back then. So I wasn't like out in the wilderness. So I was able to get that feedback and like know how to improve what I was doing from the person I was working with. But I also think
2000.
there's,
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. I was trying to remember. I started listening to audiobooks in 2000. Bill
wow.
Bryson and Agatha, Penelope Keith doing the Agatha Raisin series, and Bill Bryson.
Wow.
Because
So
I
that was
started
way
getting
before.
headaches. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
pre-Audible. Yeah.
I was listening the tapes, cassette tapes.
Yeah, books on tape.
Big old Walkman walking down the street in LA.
Yeah.
Nobody walks in LA.
Yeah.
But you've been doing it for a long time. Oh, wait, sorry. I don't want to forget because I don't want to run out of time. Barbara's not failed us here. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? And if time, what's the first concert you attended?
The first concert I attended was Gloria Estefan in the Miami Sound Machine. That I can tell you.
That's the concert.
At Lake Compounce in Connecticut. I was 12, I think. The scariest thing that's ever happened to me. A friend and I'm going to say that this is like the scariest thing that's ever happened to me because it's kind of like the typical thing, but then I'm going to think about like if there's anything scarier. My friend and I were attacked on a Sunday morning walking to a festival in New York City.
Attacked? Like mugged?
Yeah. No, yeah, well, this is what my trauma therapist helped me understand. Mugged means they took something from you. He didn't want anything from us. He just wanted to hurt us. So that's attacked.
January. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it was tough. It was 2011. It's a long time ago. But I was really shook. It was broad daylight. He was not well. And he attacked me and my friend and got my friend in a chokehold from behind. And it was very, very scary. We kind of beat him off and ran away. And yeah, that affected me for a really long time. But it's, I don't want to say it's par for the course in life that like you're going to have some interaction at some point that's going to make you feel like it's going to remind you that you occupy space with the whole entire rest of the world and not just the people that you wish you occupied space with.
Yeah, I think I read in a book somewhere the things that scare us knit us together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there's EJ wants to know. Oh, sorry. I think it's come through. Something's going wrong with the messages. And Harry, I'll look into it for you. They've changed something about the chat box in Zoom. I don't know what they've done. They can't see each other's chat. So EJ says, what would your walkout song be?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Oh boy. It depends on which walkout we're talking about. Also, I'm twice divorced. So I'm really good at it.
I've never had a walkout song.
Very confident at walking out.
I love the idea.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I don't necessarily know, but let me have a think on that. That's a great question.
I think we all should have a walkout song. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Ooh, I could have used one for that job. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So I have another question, and then I've got a final question that I always ask everyone. But I'm really, really curious about, because you coach as well, right? Is there something as a coach that you know how sometimes you'll have to read the same book 6 times before it'll speak to you, before you'll take away the thing you needed to learn from it. And I
Oh,
find
yes.
myself doing that in coaching sessions where I think to myself, because I get a coach every year. I always do that. It's part of my budget. I think no matter how old you are, who you are, you need to
Yeah.
continue learning and questioning yourself. But sometimes I'll be talking to someone and the thought will occur to me, future me could get a lot better mileage out of this lesson than current me.
Mm.
Like I'm not where I need to be to understand where you're trying to bring me. Is there a common theme or something that you wish you could give to people when you're coaching that you feel maybe future them could get, but maybe they're not soaking up at the moment?
Yeah, it is. It goes back to the trust thing that I was saying, but what it is that you know how to read. You know how to read. And I know that sounds silly. You know how to read. So stop telling yourself that you don't know how to read.
Hmm. Goes back to the
You
trust.
wouldn't be here if you didn't know how to read.
But do
So
people really have that level
why
of
are
not
you
confident?
but what I'm saying is it's not conscious, but they're putting so much into trying to read a certain way. And it's
Oh,
like,
okay.
you know how to read, so let that part go.
Like the time I thought it would be a good idea to try to analyze why those girls were getting the jobs that I wasn't getting. So then I did auditions with that weird vocal fry millennial thing. And I immediately got responses from writers wanting to hire me for these books that I didn't want to do, nor was I willing to do a vocal fry.
Right. And nor should you, because you'll ruin your instrument. Right.
Yeah.
Because you
And
don't talk that
also,
way every day.
I can't stand the way it sounds personally.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't buy the
Mhm.
book. So
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it because it's lovely
Right.
if that's
But
who
it's
the
got to be
person
the way you
is.
speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not me.
Yeah. No, you know how to read.
Yeah.
So what is the thing we're trying to do here? Because it's not like underline this word, emphasis on the wrong syllable. It's not, you know how to read. You know how to read. You could literally do this with your eyes closed if you could see the words, but you can't see the words with your eyes closed. But do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
the amount of effort, the held quality that people come in with a perfectly lovely, human being who knows exactly how to read anything. I'm just going to grab this thing that I'm prepping right now. It's like, and they look at it and it's like, I sit in bed that afternoon, laptop propped up in my, no, I sit in bed that afternoon, laptop propped in my lap. You know how to read, but you do
Yeah.
this thing when you're trying to narrate. You think it's different, and it's not different. It's adjacent, right? It's not
Yeah.
a thing you don't know how to do. So rather than putting yourself in a place where it's like, I need to build this from the ground up, it's like, no, be where you are, sound like you, relate to the words on the page as you. You are the one actually standing between the author and the book right now. You stand in between them. You're not over here shouting a story at them and the reader, right? You're in the middle. You're the pivot point. So it's just like, what am I seeing? What am I seeing? What am I seeing? Oh, I see that, and I see that, and I see that, and then I saw that. Huh.
And
Right?
those stories drown it out. The stories in your, and do you know what? I
Yeah.
might be taking you totally off course, but it reminds me today it was like an orchestra, finely tuned orchestra. A jackhammer started outside my window. I had to finish 4 hours by 6 o'clock tonight, and a jackhammer started. So
Of
he
course.
took a break. The second he took a break, a leaf blower started. The second he took a break, a helicopter started. And then my bird, which wise choice for a narrator, started screeching at the top of his lungs. And I realized at a certain point I'm wasting time being upset.
Yeah.
All these stories I'm telling myself about, I'm going to have a stroke, I'm going to have a heart attack, I can't handle this stress, life is so hard. And those are the stories that you tell yourself when you're worried about your voice. Do I sound right? Do I not have the right into? All those stories are like a whole other full-time job, aren't
Yes.
they? Like
Yes.
occupying when you could just do the job.
I will tell you the best thing that a producer told me once in New York when I was fairly early in my career, and I'm so grateful he said this to me. I was getting very frustrated in the booth one time, and I was like, oh, and we're on deadline and this and that and the other thing. And he looked at me and he said, there's no such thing as an audiobook emergency.
I've heard something like that
There's no
before.
such thing as an audiobook emergency. No
Yeah,
one dies. Like, really. Yes,
yeah.
it's money, and we live in a capitalist society that holds all of our emotions hostage to money. I get it. But there's no such thing as an audiobook emergency. It can be fixed. A deadline can be shifted. God forbid you have to do it, but you could work through the night if it's whatever. It can be fixed. So like pull yourself back from the brink of like, because how good is your reading if your throat is closed because you're
Yeah.
so stressed in it,
Because you might as well not be doing it, because I'm the queen of try too hard and then get blessed. My mother passed away and I had a
Oh, I'm so
deadline
sorry.
and I was not going to miss that deadline. And I remember I was a bit crazed, but like determined to get that deadline. So I sent them a message because again, things were going wrong. I had a bad day. And I said, I'm really, really, they must think I'm crazy. I said, I'm really, 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 really sorry, but my mother passed away. So I might be 10 minutes late, but I promise it's on the way. And they were like normal human beings. Of course, this is fine. Don't worry. No, 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 no. I can't. And I think I
Yeah,
sent them because, of course, what happens when you're in that state? The upload didn't work, and then the
of
upload didn't
course.
work. And so,
Of
that
course.
they think you're crazy. That getting in a state doesn't ever help, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No.
Especially not when you need the channels clear to be able to tell other people's stories. I really
Right.
like what you keep saying though about like the story, because we live in a world of limited resources. We live in a world of there's limited space inside your psyche, your body. We say like, oh, I've had enough. It's too much. We talk about volume and content of emotion a lot. And I think it's
Yeah.
because we are finite containers, right? There's only so much we can take, right?
And you can
And
only
you keep talking
experience one
about,
emotion at a time, right?
well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily, I think there you can experience a lot of emotions in conflict with each other, although if it's exactly simultaneous, I don't know. But what I was going to say is that you talk about the stories you tell yourself, and I think those take up a certain amount of space.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing as professional storytellers is trying to tell someone else's story with we're trying to, like what we tell ourselves, like, I want to give myself to this job. I want to give myself to this work and I want to do the best job I can with it.
As a vessel.
Yeah. So to
Yeah.
accept the fact that the more you allow your own story, anxiety, self-criticism, whatever it is, to take up space, that is space that is not being given to the thing you're trying to do. And in that way, you are actually limiting what is possible, not just what you can do in the moment, like what you can execute. You're actually limiting what's possible before you even, you know, turn on the microphone.
Okay. I'm going to sneak in my final questions so that we
Yeah.
can do this in a timely manner. For the studio audience that's going to be watching this for the next 60 years or so, if they walk away from this call and take anything away from this conversation, any like piece of advice, words of wisdom, funny joke, one thing you would want them to remember from this call, what would you like to leave them with?
Um, hard to say this without sounding um, not glib. I don't know what this community. I've been in a lot of communities in my artistic life, right? I've been in, television shows and theater and regional theater and on Broadway and off Broadway. I've been a narrator. And I have never felt so in sync with the work I'm doing and so seen by a community of people who give with such generosity their experience and appreciation of the work. And I do think that makes me a better narrator. Like, because I'm not a person who reads reviews, and I'm not a person who like puts a lot of stock in like, oh, this person said that or this person said that.
Yeah.
But my experience of this particular community is that the absolute, I'm like getting choked up here, the absolute sincerity with which people express their love for my work has changed me as a person. And that is so profound, because I think as artists, as freelancers in a capitalist society, to allow, I was kind of taught, you don't allow that level of vulnerability for yourself in this, you gotta, elbows out, everything is like, you
Yeah,
gotta
but
do your
that's our
thing here.
job.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will never not be grateful. I'm so grateful. Deanna Anthony's here. She sent me an email last week that made me cry. How dare you make me cry? But really, like,
you're not on social media, are you? Like, this is what strikes me. You don't have to be. I had somebody ask me the other day, can I post about this? I haven't posted in 3 days. I have to post. You don't have to. You don't have to have that level of giving and loving and care, right? You don't have to be pinned to Facebook and showing up every single second on social media. You're doing it, and everyone loves you. And you still make connections. You don't have to pimp yourself out 24 hours a day, right? Do the job. And if you can, try to be like January, because oh my God, have you listened to her narrate?
No, don't be
I'm just
like
joking.
me.
I'm joking. We have to be like ourselves. We can never be January, unfortunately. So everyone be your own self. But yeah, I love, you've made me think about the ways I spend my energy. And I think it's everything. It's everything. And the love, you didn't see it because you're not on social media, but the minute it was posted that you were going to be on this call, the love was just like bubbling through Facebook and whatever. So it's a tangible thing.
It's very meaningful to me. And I just want people to know that it is. And because I'm not on social media, I don't know that people know that it matters. And I think that's part of it, is like people think like, somebody like me is like, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. It affects me so much. I mean, so much. I can't even tell you. So thank you for giving me a space to be able to express that to people.
Everyone knows that thank you, January. You are a beautiful soul, and I've learned so much from you. That's from Barbara. I'm going to send you the chat.
Thank you,
Harry said something as well, but they're coming in so fast I can't catch up with them. So I will send you the chat after you can see everyone's lovely messages. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here.
It was wonderful meeting you.
You too. I hope we get to meet someday in real life.
Yay, I will show up someday. Bye, everyone. Thanks, everyone. You're gorgeous. Thanks for showing up. Bye, January.
Thank you. Bye.